whether or not going to Jim Schwartz as your head coach at this point kind of feels like a letdown in a lot of ways, right? Like if it feels like you're settling, which I mean, I brought it up last night when we were talking. It's not so much that I get to the guy, Jim Schwartz, and I go, well, that's just a settle of a hire. Had you made that decision within a week? Had it felt like he was the front runner throughout the entire process? And even if you were doing your due diligence, it felt like constantly Jim was in the front of it, and it was candidate X against Jim Schwartz, and you've constantly sided with Jim Schwartz. I'd be like, okay, that's not a settle. But I've been taken down the route of it feels like they wanted to go Grant Udinski. Maybe something went wrong in that interview. Then it felt like sights were set on Nate Shieldhouse. If in all of this you come through this almost month-long process and you fall back and you go, defensive coordinator that is in the building, that has been here for 3 years, is the guy, at this point, I feel like you've gone through and you've gotten to option 3, option 4, and you've come back to that guy. And it does at that point, for me at least, kind of feel like you settled on Jim Schwartz and didn't actually attack the guy that your data-driven search said you should go out and get, and the guy that your general manager, and I'd imagine part of that room, identified as that's who we want to be our next head coach, or that's our lead candidate and going in. No matter who they hire, they're down to option number 2, because Harbaugh was probably 1.
Are you trying to say that history would repeat itself for like the 4th time? The Chris Palmer search in 1999 was the same way. The Rob Chudzinski search was the same way. The Mike Pettin search was the same way. Okay? I mean, it's just that's the way she goes around here.
But I would say with Schwartz, though, right? You have at least he's been really. You go out and you find really good coordinators, and you're like, these guys. So he's had a really good 3 years. So there's a little bit of that, even though it does seem like. I mean, there's no way you can't say it, right? They've went out and done all this stuff. Obviously, they've had other interests, but when you look at a guy who's had success as a coordinator, it's a little bit different, right? Because he's had a ton of success with the 2 other phases of the team being terrible. If those 2 other phases were anything average, he'd be a head coach at a lot of places because that defense would have been even more dominant.
Well, here's another thing to think about. Like, it's not like this has been between 4 or 5 guys all the way through, right? Because we're sitting here saying that as of this morning, it was a 4-man race, mostly because of circumstances, but those are the last 4 men standing at this point, though. They talked to 11 different guys. They reached out to a couple of other people as well who I think don't exactly, weren't exactly interested as well. So,
and I planned to conduct 7 in-person interviews.
Right. So there's no way they can sell Jim Schwartz was their guy all along. Now, the right PR selling point, here I am helping the Browns do their jobs again because they're just so great at it all the time, is, hey, we went through an extensive and thorough process. We vetted a tremendous amount of candidates. And ultimately, we decided after going through this process that, yes, in fact, Jim Schwartz absolutely was the best job or best man for this job. That is the PR message the Browns will need to have. Not that, hey, he was our guy all along. No, because if he was your guy all along, you would have talked to 3 or 4 other dudes and wrapped this thing up 2 weeks ago, okay? And so even with maybe one of those guys being Nate Shieldhouse, you would have said, yeah, we're good on Nate. Like, Jimmy's our guy. We're going with Jim. No, he obviously isn't their guy or wasn't their guy, okay? And it has taken this extensive process to get all the way back to where you began, because I do believe Jim was the first interview. I know him and Tommy Reese were in the same day. I forget who was first up there. I think Tommy was the second interview. But, now all of a sudden you're back where you started from after not only interviewing 10 other candidates, but having overtures to multiple other ones that maybe didn't reciprocate the interest. Come on. So, I think it's also incumbent upon the organization to be very honest with fans and also us, about the search and how they, arrived at whatever coaching decision they ultimately end up making.
Right, and I never wanted to be like I don't think Jim Schwartz is a good candidate, because as soon as it happened, I threw out there Jim Schwartz was a guy that I think should be highly considered for this job. Going back to last Monday, 8 days ago, Nick and I, when I was filling in an afternoon drive, went through of the 6 guys who initially came out that had the second interviews. We ranked them. Jim Schwartz fell at 3 for me behind Udinsky and Shielhaus.
If Schwartz was the guy, then why didn't you fire Kevin in November when you knew you were firing Kevin at the end of the year and give Jim a 6 to 7 game audition, much like you gave Shedeur Sanders, much like you gave Dylan Gabriel? Why didn't you do that?
And I think it's a fair question.
Well, I know logically those questions, it seems like they think differently. They think differently on how they run their organization, how they hire people, how they do things, and whether
Might
we
be
like
part
it,
of the problem.
Yeah, it might be. Well, it's just like, you know, if you're saying exactly right in terms of they'll come out and say, you know, this is our guy, instead of saying, no, this is we did all this. He's for sure he's the guy that was more impressive than these other guys, but they won't do that. That's not. It doesn't seem how they work, and that's a problem when you're not transparent. And I also think with Jim Schwartz, there's people have said, well, you know, of course he was good on defense. He has Miles, and he has Schlesinger, and he has, you know, Denzel Ward. No, I'm not talking about those guys. They're tied to Schwartz, not only money-wise, but the guys they brought in, those middle guys, they are attached to this defense. And if Schwartz is not here, that becomes now a rebuild or more of a heavy retool than it will have to be if he's here. That's something they had that hopefully they thought about as well.
Well, I mean, they spent the number 5 pick in the draft on a guy built for Jim Schwartz's defense in Mason Graham. That's a significant investment there, right? Mm-hmm. Malik Collins, who they signed in free agency. Now, granted, that wasn't like a 5-year mega deal, but that was an investment.
Good player who became a great player in the scheme. You're absolutely right.
You know, you look at a couple of the corners.
Devin Bush, downhill.
Tyson Campbell, man-to-man guy.
You got it.
That's what Schwartz runs, man-to-man. Not so well for him in Jacksonville because they played a lot of zone and other coverages. But here in Cleveland, man-to-man. Oh, what do you know? The guy comes in and plays well because you're putting a player in a position to do the things that make him a successful player. Gee, golly willikers, what do you know? Like, it drives me nuts, these organizations, and the Browns are at the top of the list that make this game so much harder than it needs to be. Yes, everyone knows you're smart in your own right. You wouldn't have your job if you weren't, okay? Nobody's questioning your football acumen, your intelligence, your ability to scheme and draw plays. But darn it, why do you have to be the smartest people in the room? This isn't that hard. It's just football, people. No offense, Coach.
No, you know, it's funny you say that, and I have been just as much as fault as anybody else. So when you say that, I'm not taking offense because in my mind I've said why do I do that? Because you overthink yourself, and it's the same thing. My dad always had a great comment was it's like a guy like Tyson Campbell. He's a guy when he came out, he was a man guy. He's always been a man guy. He's always not been great in zone. Then don't make him play zone. Make these guys work their strengths. You know, do what they do best instead of saying we're gonna fix. You know, and once again, that's why I smile because that's exactly.
Jabril Peppers, good closer to the box.
Yeah,
they were playing him
25 yards off the line. They were playing him at mentor.
Right. So you think about. So once again, I'm just as much at fault as any other coach at any other level. You say I'm gonna fix this guy. Why? Don't fix it. He's in the NFL for a reason. Tyson Campbell's in the NFL because he can cover a man. Devin Bush is in the NFL because he can play downhill with his hair on fire. Don't make him play read gaps and to make. So yeah, once again, they're tied to him because a lot of these guys, not the studs, these second level guys are tied to this scheme and they won't be as good in the regular scheme.
So maybe this is going too inside football, but I want your opinion on it, Coach, because I battled with this in my own head and I've talked to people about it. Same thing, like. We look at a defense coordinator like Brian Flores, and I know we talked about this because obviously, you know, they played the Vikings this year, and we talk about a guy that disguises a ton of his coverages, makes it really tough on rookie quarterbacks. Like, maybe I'm wrong. That's not Jim Schwartz, though. Jim Schwartz plays a very upfront, it's a wide 9 technique, and you're basically saying my guys are better than your guys, and they're designed to do this. You are playing into the fact they have talent, and this team runs man as much as anybody else in the NFL, right? It's that and a lot of combo with like cover 3 mixed in there. I want to know what about the technique, because Jim Schwartz is, you know, one of the few guys in the NFL, and I think the only one actually actively in the NFL, if I'm not mistaken, that is a defensive coordinator that runs the wide 9, and it's like a dying art in football basically at this point. But what is it about the wide 9 that I look around and I go, okay, well, take him out of the wide 9, you basically throw him in like cover 1, right, the one high hat. You're asking the guys to play man. You're asking your defensive line to go after it. Now, I know there's a ton of defense coordinators got no problem running cover one out of whatever formation they're running at. What is it specifically that, there's obviously people in the building looking around going, I can't lose Jim Schwartz. Like, he is so impactful for that defense that they won't succeed in another, a similar but different style of defense.
Well, more than the wide 9 or, the wide 5 or the wide techniques is that he believes, first of all, he believes in what he's doing, which is important as a coach. But what I think he does best, without question, above the scheme, is that his guys, they're not thinking. And if you're thinking, your feet aren't moving. And if you look at the Browns defense, when the ball is snapped, their hair is on fire because everybody has simple rules. So these in the NFL, when you're talking about what all these multiple coverages and all these things they do in the NFL, it's very hard for a young guy, for a young quarterback. There's two things that can really screw up a young quarterback. You can do a bunch of different things, or you can put him on his back. Jim Schwartz would prefer to put you on your back. He wants you to think about you're going to get hit every single time. And how do you get hit in the NFL? For me, when I watch their defense, it's a four front, it's man coverage, and they're saying simple rules. Now, when you think about, for me, so now it's a simple concept that everybody understands, and they get to practice that every single day. So instead of practicing cover 2 and cover 4 and cover 6 and sky and cloud and all the mixes, they're practicing man. So think about all the man reps they get every single day at practice. They're not splitting it up between all these different coverages. It's a mindset that he creates, and it's really, really simple. They play really, really fast. They understand what they're doing, and they rep just that, and that makes you really, really good. I'm a big believer in reps. You win with reps, and when you go to a Schwartz practice, which I'm lucky enough to do, it's the same thing every day. They're working. They start the day with a strip drill, right? A fumble recovery drill, and then corners get into man technique, and the defensive linemen start rushing the passer, and it's the same thing every day. Well, you get pretty good after you're doing the same thing every day. So for me, that's what his scheme is. It's not really the scheme. It's they play fast, it's simple, and the guys practice it every day.
And do you think that's a rare thing to find? Because that would be the sell to keep Jim Schwartz on, right? If I can take another defensive coordinator that can look at what they've done, and just go, well, I'll just come in and basically steal 95% of what Jim Schwartz did and try to be the leader of men that I already am. Does that work?
Well, as Daryl said, us coaches, which is very true, some guys like to show how smart they are, and they're good at it, and they like to run multiple coverages, 2 hi-hats, and now even teams are running 3 hi-hats and rotating and doing all these things. Jim Schwartz is very, if as a high school football coach, there's nothing that Jim Schwartz does on defense. You go, oh my gosh, what is he doing there? I don't understand it. But the thing you respect is you go, oh my gosh, those guys know how to line up and fly around.
This just in from Mary Kay Cabot. The Browns did more work on 3 head coach finalists today and are still working through some things. The 3 finalists are Jim Schwartz, Todd Monken, and Nate Scheelhaase. We could possibly still hear something tonight. That again from Mary Kay Cabot of Cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer. So the final 4 is down to the big 3.
We've eliminated 1. We've got now Todd Monken still in the race, which
so there's this thing where I guess you can bet. I don't want to give the platform because I don't want to give any free advertising, but there is.
But if they want to sponsor the show, they're by all means
exactly.
Reach out. Reach out. If you want your name dropped, we're all open to it. Okay.
But I have a no free plugs policy.
I'm right there with you, Daryl.
But there's this app where people can bet on the next Browns head coach, and just before Mary Kay's report on X came out, the Todd Monken odds shot up immensely. Remember, earlier in the day, the Nathan Scheelhaase odds went through the roof. So very, very interesting. Again, Mary Kay saying work done today on 3 candidates, Schwartz, Monken, Scheelhaase. Maybe we get some news tonight. Remains to be seen. But there you go.